Aristotle was a moral scientist. That doesn't mean that he was a scientist who was well behaved. He was a philosopher who believed that morality was a question of science, that there was a way to discover the foundations, that there was a way to validate our moral beliefs that was as true and objective as other realms of science, other domains of knowledge. Now, after tutoring Alexander the Great, Aristotle returned to Athens and set up a school of his own. Plato had the Academy, Aristotle opened the Lyceum. And they must have been radically different kinds of places. Plato's Academy, we could imagine, is a place where philosophers sat around and reasoned about the nature of the true forms of ideas. Aristotle's Lyceum must have been something like a modern comprehensive research university. Aristotle himself was a remarkably broad scholar. He wrote 200 books on subjects that today would occupy dozens of different academic departments. He wrote about ethics and politics and aesthetics and rhetoric. He wrote about botany and zoology. He wrote about all sorts of things under the sun, because for Aristotle, these were all about the nature of things. And Aristotle's Lyceum combined not only this kind of breadth, but also a research enterprise, like the modern university. Aristotle believed not just in the power of reason, but in the importance of empirical knowledge. He believed that we could learn through observing facts about the way the world is. And he believed this in what we would consider the natural sciences, but also what we would consider political science. And Aristotle's Lyceum was a great research institute that would collect data about hundreds of different Greek constitutions. And in fact, in one text, the Constitution of the Athenians, a text that was actually discovered on papyrus in Egypt in the late 19th century, we have a document that was produced by one of the students of Aristotle's Lyceum and shows us an actual example of the way that Aristotle's school would try and observe in great detail the concrete institutional realities of a constitution in the Greek world. Aristotle believed that there were three different kinds of knowledge. There was theoretical knowledge, that is speculative knowledge about metaphysics or theology, we might call it, about the way the world was. There was productive knowledge, knowledge about how to do things or how to make things, like rhetoric, how to make a speech. And there was practical knowledge. And Aristotle considered above all that ethics and politics were the domain of practical knowledge. And Aristotle believed that, in fact, humans naturally wanted knowledge, that there was something innate, there was something natural about the fact that humans wanted to know about the world. He saw our emotion of wonder, that feeling that humans have when they want to know something. We want to observe the stars and then we want to know why they are there, what they are truly. And Aristotle said this is somehow deeply part of human nature, to know the world. And in fact, Aristotle will come to ground his entire political philosophy on what he believes is human nature. Nature for Aristotle is what will allow him to provide an account of morality that is objective, that avoids the relativism of the sophists and avoids the pure rationalism of Plato, and instead grounds our understanding of the world and the way that we think about morality in our observations of nature and in our human experiences. Aristotle says that things in nature have a purpose. And this is maybe the most fundamental idea of Aristotle's philosophy. And to remember it, you need to understand one Greek word, telos, telos. It means end or purpose or aim. Aristotle believes that things in nature have a telos, especially organisms. They have a purpose. They have some end towards which they tend, towards which they're supposed to end, their purpose, their aim. Aristotle says that just as it's the purpose of an acorn to grow into an oak tree, or it's the purpose of some small little marine creature to grow into a big one, that human beings have a natural purpose, that we have certain natural capacities that is our end, that we have a natural end. And Aristotle believes that the end of human nature is flourishing, happiness, eudaimonia. This fundamental Greek word, eudaimonia, that you sometimes see translated as happiness, sometimes as well-being, and sometimes as flourishing. Now, remember that sometimes it's considered happiness. We'll come back to that in a later part of the course. For Aristotle, the best translation of eudaimonia is flourishing. And we've seen, going back to our conversations about Socrates, that this is a complex, this is a rich word that has different connotations already in the Greek. We've seen Socrates asking people what it means to be happy, what it means to have true happiness. Is true happiness success in material terms, wealth and prosperity and pleasure and admiration? Or is eudaimonia, is happiness somehow a moral quality? Does it mean to be a good person, morally good, morally virtuous? And for Aristotle, as we'll see, eudaimonia is such a rich word because it has both connotations. It means to live a life that is flourishing. And for Aristotle, that's the best translation of eudaimonia, flourishing. And Aristotle develops a philosophy in which the purpose of human life is to live a life that is flourishing because it is lived virtuously according to reason. Aristotle is the philosopher of virtue. And when you hear virtue philosophy or virtue ethics, understand that it derives ultimately from Aristotle and his way of thinking about the world. Virtue ethics and virtue philosophy is a thriving branch of philosophy to this day. And it's a credit to Aristotle that his way of seeing the world remains so fundamental today. Virtue comes from a Latin word, virtus, but in the Greek it's arete, arete. And it means excellence. When you think of virtue in Aristotle's philosophy, think of it as meaning excellence, a kind of quality, that is a state of being that we would associate with positive qualities. Aristotle says that these are virtues, these human excellences, are the fulfillment of our capacities. And Aristotle develops a moral philosophy in which is grounded in the idea that humans are meant to achieve excellence in different domains of life. And Aristotle develops a moral philosophy in which virtue, in which excellence is the key term. And to achieve happiness, for Aristotle, means to live a life that is excellent, that achieves the different virtues. What are these virtues for Aristotle? Well, they're the traditional Greek virtues, virtues like courage. Think of what courage is. Courage is a quality. It's a kind of character trait. Someone can have courage, they can be courageous, and it's a quality that we admire. Aristotle says, think about what that means. That's significant. We admire this quality, courage. And even if you and I might have differences in our moral beliefs, we can ultimately reason about the kinds of qualities that we admire in human beings. Take people that you know that are maybe from radically different religious traditions or different cultures. Would they not generally agree that courage is an admirable quality? That we admire someone who has courage. Aristotle says, think about what courage is. Courage is a rational indifference to fear and willingness to do the right thing, even when you might feel fear. That's a quality that we admire. Aristotle pulls out something else about this kind of trait. He says that it's a kind of trait that has a mean. It's a kind of trait that has a balance. Think about the nature of courage. Having too little courage is cowardice. Having too much courage is brashness or is foolhardiness. He's getting into something that's very profound here about the nature of the virtues. The virtues require a kind of reason. That is, that to be courageous, you have to be able to assess situations and know the difference between cowardice and know the difference between courage and foolhardiness. Aristotle says there are these kinds of qualities that we can generally admire in different human beings that are of this nature, that they have a kind of balanced quality. They're not deficient, they're not excessive. That is, that they achieve a kind of mean, and that this achievement of this kind of balance requires the use of reason to pursue these virtues. And Aristotle says that courage is just one example. Self-control, another one of the cardinal virtues in ancient Greece. To have too little self-control is to be dissolute, but there is such a thing as having too much self-control, right? Someone who has too much self-control is simply abstemious. They don't know how to have the proper balance in life. And with this idea of the nature of the virtues, Aristotle's tapping very deeply into a core belief of Greek culture: nothing in excess. This is a phrase that's traditionally on the temple at the god Apollo at Delphi. Nothing in excess. The nature of the virtues is to use reason to achieve balance in these qualities of excellence, like courage, like self-control. Don't be so unself-controlled that you're dissolute. Don't be so overly self-controlled that you're abstemious and no fun to be around. Be properly balanced. Aristotle says it's the same with other virtues. Piety. You can lack piety. You can be obsessive and be superstitious. Aristotle goes even beyond the traditional cardinal virtues of Greece and outlines a whole range of ways in which individuals can achieve virtues in different domains of their life, that humans can achieve excellence, and that is indeed the purpose of human life, to fulfill these qualities of excellence. Aristotle talks about different virtues like greatness of soul, megalopsychia, magnanimity, that's a direct Latin translation, greatness of soul, magnanimity, a kind of self-respect that's generous and yet at the same time regards oneself with honor and expects others to do so as well. Aristotle says that even if we may disagree about what morality is, we can reason, we can dialogue about what kinds of qualities we admire in individuals. And these qualities are those excellences which humans, particularly by nature, have the ability to fulfill. And Aristotle will build his moral and indeed political philosophy on the idea that human beings have qualities of excellence that they are uniquely adapted to fulfill.